This game is not a joke, and I mean that both in the sense that despite a store page description, this game isn't a meme is actually quite amazing, and also not a joke in the sense that this game depicts very dark and sensitive themes. I originally stumbled across this game because I did think it was a meme. I mean, can you blame me? The game's description literally states that it is depicting the life of OMG Kawaii-chan! I'm not the one at fault here. Even so, I saw the overwhelmingly positive rating and decided to read more on it. And even after that, I was still convinced it was a meme. So I bought the game anyways because I love psychological horror, whether it's actually done correctly or it's ironic like Crab Game. And man, I did not expect at all for this game to be so good. Needy Streamer Overload is a game best played knowing as little as possible. Therefore, this review will contain no spoilers past the game descriptions and first 30 minutes of the game. As stated previously, originally I could not take this game seriously. It was literally categorized alongside the most questionable games possible. I thought Needy Streamer Overload was a game encouraging players to furiously push their Ps and live their fantasy of dating a real-life anime VTuber. And part of that is true. You play as the perceived producer and boyfriend of wannabe content creator Amelia Watson, Ame, also known as
OMG Kawaii-chan,
or Kangel for short. Your role in this game is to help Ame become as famous as possible as a streamer in 30 in-game days. You also have to manage resources such as affection levels, stress levels, and psychopathy levels. The gameplay literally only consists of reading text messages from Ame, responding with emotes only, choosing what activities would be best for her during the day, whether that's trying to learn new skills for streaming or managing resources with these activities, and choosing what to stream or whether you should stream or not during the night. For example, much like in real life, if you avoid streaming consistently, you might suffer in the growth department for your following. But if you stream too much, your stress levels could get too high, and I wonder what happens when people get too stressed out. Your decisions for all these tasks do matter, as every action adds up to a potentially different ending that you might get at the end of the 30 days, or potentially before then. So choose wisely what you want for your digital anime girlfriend. Let's talk about the biggest strength of this game, which is its writing. I'm very confident that the developers have to be degenerate Twitch chatters because their portrayal of the fans and the chat experience in this game seems almost too real. The representation of Twitter and chatters in this game are more realistic than Red Dead Redemption 2's graphics. And I'm barely exaggerating here. But aside from degenerate portrayals, Ame's character is also very well written, with very different personalities depending on her affection, stress, or depression levels. Which makes complete sense, as you tend to act differently when you're stressed or depressed, compared to when you're excessively horny, for example. However, it's how subtle but gradual changes start to happen, where you start to realize that this girl might be more than just an anime waifu, but a genuine human being, so made of pixels, but who might not be so mentally stable, and then you need to start being more careful with your actions in order to avoid any issues. As you play, you start to truly understand her aspirations and her desires to become the greatest streamer of all time, but you also learn about her weaknesses and mental instability, and why this journey ahead will require a lot of sacrifice. And yet, despite you being in full control of her actions, it almost feels like you're also powerless, because despite being her guidance and controlling what happens in her daily life, ultimately you aren't Ame. You can't control what she says, you can't control how she reacts to situations, you can't control her in every aspect. She has her own character and you're merely trying to influence her actions, but you're not piloting her from within. And her interactions not only with you, but with the world also starts to change as her stats change. The amount of depth that this character has, even though she's essentially only ever communicating with you, a borderline silent protagonist, is worthy of a lot of praise. She's essentially only ever interacting with herself, and you're still learning so much about her. I think Needy Streamer Overload is easily worth playing for the development of this Ame character alone, and for its writing. But let's discuss the darker topics now. Clearly, very early on, you can start to feel that Ame's not alright, so she should probably get some help, but you don't have that option, so you're her only hope. You're in complete control of her actions and what she should do on a daily basis, and here's a question. Do you prioritize her mental well-being or her goals and aspirations? Because much like in real life, it's hard to always do both, especially if you have too much ambition, like she does. You'll have to complete multiple playthroughs to witness the true consequences of your actions, and even though it might be painful to watch, I think it's worth it for the experience. This might be light spoilers, but it should have been easy for anyone to infer early on that these were possibilities within the game. Here's a quick warning before I mention them, and timestamps to skip if you really want to go in as blind as possible, but essentially, you will see depictions of self-harm and cutting due to too much stress. You'll likely see overdose as a coping mechanism, or at many points, hearing about her desire to jump off buildings. I'm pretty sure YouTube doesn't let me say the word, so that's a synonym for it. And many times, she does present these as jokes, but her descriptions start to become more morbid as your game progresses. And all of these dark depictions stem from the fact that she wants to achieve her goal by any means necessary, regardless of her own mental health. Don't worry though, because as players, we can fix her! Copium. I think this game has a very accurate portrayal of real life. It's a true showcase of the extreme sides of streaming culture and the dark side of what happens when you go too far. I obviously don't think this game's situation is applicable to a large majority of big streamers, nor do I think it's wrong to want to go to extremes in order to achieve results in a specific field. Funnily enough, I was watching a popular VTuber play this game yesterday, and she literally said she can't relate to the situation of the game. That's obviously a good sign, and I believe her, but that doesn't show that this game strays too far from reality. None of us need to relate to streamers either to determine whether this game reflects their reality or not, because most people know how cruel social media can be, and once you factor in a mentally unstable young adult to the mix, the results don't really seem shocking. This game is a great portrayal of streaming culture and a fascinating portrayal of mental illness and the psychology of potential content creators. Psychological horror is one of my favorite genres, and I'm interested in the idea of content creation in general, so obviously there's bias regarding this game. But I wholeheartedly recommend it if there's any interest at all for you regarding this game. The experience is worth the base price, and with its multiple endings and decision making in the game, there's enough content to last you for a long time. So that's a review. I highly recommend the game to anyone that even has the slightest interest in psychological horror, but if you're also a fan of streaming culture or you watch a lot of live streams, that's an added bonus to enjoyment of the game. If you enjoyed the review, a like and comment goes a long way for a small channel like mine, especially if I have your waifu held hostage in my basement. Subscribing will increase the chances of her release. I also make other videos reviewing games, typically smaller indie games are also very good, so you can check those out as well. My credentials are enthusiast of good games and professional opinion haver. Anyways, I'll hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.